guys, we're here at Secrest Arboretum again. I'm here with Jason Vale. He's the curator of the Arboretum. This will be kind of the first part of the virtual field trip. The other part is already on YouTube, so you guys will have my little walk around and chatting about the Arboretum. But I'm here to ask him a couple of questions. I'm going to kind of call this 2-minute drill. How's that?
Okay, it works.
Question. Hopefully you have about 2 minutes or so to answer it.
This is totally unscripted. You do
completely unscripted. I mean, I know what you've talked about in the last few years.
I'll do my best. Yes.
So why don't we start with giving them a little bit of the history of the Arboretum?
Well, the Arboretum has been in use for over 100 years now. It started out in the early 1900s, 1905, 06, and it started out primarily as a forestry research center, an experiment station, and it was basically focused on timber plants. What could be grown here, what was the rotation, what was the spacing, what could you make those things out of? And over the last 110 to 120 years, that has slowly shifted more towards ornamental plants, starting with the shade tree evaluation plot that happened in the 60s and 70s, which was kind of a turning point where you start to look at plants for their functional and social value rather than their, as a commodity or as a product. And so after that, we've got into different evaluations such as crab-apples, ornamental crab-apples, shrubs, and other plants throughout the second half of the 20th century, and that's where we find ourselves now.
Do you find the Arboretum is still doing a lot of research on plants, or is it more informal research?
So it's both, and we're really trying to increase the level of formal research right now in that we're bringing back a lot of the plant trialing that was done here back in the 20th century. As an independent land grant facility, we have the opportunity to look at plants and how they perform and then report those findings back to the industry, back to students, back to home gardeners. Because all plants don't perform as promised generally. They're bred for one purpose. They may not work in Ohio, they may do well in Oregon, they may do well on the East Coast, but they may not do well here. So it's our place to grow those plants out and have an objective measure of how well they would work in landscapes or how they were intended. The plants don't read the catalogs, is what I like to tell people. So we're starting out with a coneflower trial, an echinacea trial, in the rose garden, the former rose garden, which is maybe another question we can talk, or another video, we can talk about the rose garden some other day. So this is our first year for that trial. Following the coneflower trial will be flowering hydrangeas, the panicle hydrangea, which is a very popular flowering shrub in the marketplace right now, which is inundated with new varieties. It's a confusing jumble of new introductions and name varieties out there that we want to put them in the rose garden and evaluate them side by side and gain that knowledge of how they perform.
So if you're looking at the different plants out in the Arboretum, we're going to kind of shift gears a little bit from research. If you're looking at the different plants in the Arboretum, there's not a lot going on right now in terms of witch hazels that were flowering. The Lenten roses here, even they weren't doing a whole lot, although at ATI they are flowering. Do you have plants that you keep in the Arboretum even though they're struggling? Or do you have plants that you would really like to showcase and see more of in the Arboretum? Totally different question.
So at any given time, you can see plants in the Arboretum that are at every spectrum of the struggling, from newly planted and establishing to old and struggling. We want to try to do as much as we possibly can. This 30 acres in the display gardens that I'm looking out the window at right now should be the most diversely planted area in all of Ohio is our goal. We want to try to see what we can grow and do that in a practical manner so that folks who visit and use the Arboretum for educational purposes, for industry trainings, can see how those plants perform here. So to me, growing 3 different taxa, 3 different uniquely named plants is better than growing 3 of the same thing in the same area. Diversity is key to learning and to making the collection more valuable and healthier as well. Does that answer your question?
I think it kind of does. Yeah, I mean, that was kind of an odd question to ask, I guess. What are your top 2 or 3 biggest challenges that you have in this arboretum?
The top challenge, well, right now it's been the weather. That's consistently a challenge. We have naturally poorly drained soils in most of the arboretum. Most of the area downslope of the high point, which is sort of up where Williams Road takes the bend and goes south. That's the highest point, but then down towards the Welcome Center, we have a fairly dense clay soils. We have hard pans throughout the arboretum, and the water does not drain quickly at all. So after this recent rain, we'll be sloshing around and for several days. Unfortunately, a lot of plants, except for your bottomland species and your plants that are adapted to those type of conditions, a lot of the plants we'd like to grow here don't appreciate heavy, wet, waterlogged soil. So we have to be judicious about where we're putting these plants. Again, it's an educational opportunity to show practically when you're given a challenge, how do you address soil that's really wet and poorly drained. And you can see it in action here, because over the years here, there was holly research done, and we're down to about 3 hollies that have, American hollies that have survived because this lower area is just so wet that they've struggled. There's some struggling plants for you, in that those plants are 50 to 60 years old, but they're 20 feet tall. And so that lack of a nice, well-drained soil that they really prefer has really put them behind the 8 ball. So we're losing them slowly. The weather's a challenge. Funding for any public garden, especially a university managed garden like we are, is always right up there with your challenges. Horticulture is expensive. Doing horticulture right is even more expensive. And folks expect to come here. We want to exhibit excellence in the things that we do and demonstrate how these plants should be grown and maintained, and that takes money. And that's one of the biggest challenges, I think, other than the weather that we have.
Okay. This is class an ecology class, and most of the students in this particular group are ag communications, agri-science education, so they're looking at being future educators. Ecology is all about relationships. Where would you say the Arboretum fits within the relationships of the Worcester community, the university, students, faculty, staff who work here?
So we're a very important part of campus. I think we're valued much more for the recreational value that we provide to folks. We have a lot of 4-legged fuzzy visitors as well as 2-legged folks. I would really like to see that relationship evolve into more classes like this one coming and utilizing the Arboretum. I would love to see more maybe K through 12 programs use the Arboretum, because I'm thinking about the future, and I'm sure these are topics that you touch on in ecology, is that we're facing urbanization, we're facing climate change, we're facing a lot of these challenges in the 21st century. And to me, plants and how we use plants in society and constructed environments is going to make life better and address some of these problems. So the ecology of plants, I think, is if we integrate, and it can be native plants in natural areas, it can be cultivated plants in business parks and offices and schools and campuses. They work to make the world a better place. And another thing that's important is how a lot of new research, tons of new research is connecting health and wellness with exposure to plants. And so that's the other thing that I think will be really up and coming and pushing arboreta and gardens like ours to the forefront, is that we provide that for folks, and we can promote how to use plants in built environments. And you can't argue with health and wellness. I don't think anyone would say, I'm good, I don't want to be healthier or happier. Right. And so we provide that here, and I think the research is going to continue to show that positive effect that plants have on people.
Well, I know I've seen a lot more visitors here in the last few days with the challenges of recent events.
Indeed, yes.
So hopefully that people are people are getting out. But I can't believe the number of people I've given tours here, and they go, I didn't even know this was here. And I lived in Worcester my whole
That's
life."
challenge number 3.
There you go.
Right,
Getting
challenge
people out there.
3 is that we've never been really good at promoting ourselves. We're not a commercial entity where we're not collecting fees to enter, entrance fees. So, we want people to know we're here and come and use this, but we don't really have a budget or a means to really blast and broadcast that. So it's a word of mouth thing. It's when we get out and we talk to people about the Arboretum. But no, that's a classic. I've lived in Worcester my whole life,
And I didn't even know this.
I didn't know this was here.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's a challenge as well.
All right. One final question before we go, and it's a question I hate answering, but I love asking.
Oh,
What's your favorite plant?
man, what's your favorite kid or pet? Right? To me, it's whatever I'm standing near at any
That's
given
exactly the
time.
answer I always give. Whatever I'm standing in front
It's
of.
whatever I'm saying, especially.
Okay, let me rephrase it then. If you
Okay.
could have one in your garden, what would it be?
Ooh. If I could have one plant in my garden, what would it be? Wow. For some reason, wow.
It's not a nice question. Is
That's
it?
an awful question. And if any of you ever become plant nerds or plant addicts like we are, you'll understand how difficult that is. If you could only eat one food for the rest of your life, what would you eat?
Pizza.
I guess that's an easier one. I don't know. I could give you 5 or 6.
No, you're only allowed one.
How's about?
I'll give you 2.
All right. All right. How about Katsura tree would be one.
Okay.
I love to rake Katsura tree leaves in the fall.
Yeah.
When
They smell so
when
good.
they turn crispy and dry, they smell sweet and delicious. So it's fun to go out and rake those. Plus, it's a beautiful tree. It handles wet soils well, which is another. It loves wet soils. The second, I bet you, would be another wet soil tolerant plant, bald cypress. I think bald cypress.
Oh yeah, that's a cool plant.
Is all around one of the great trees. It takes cold, heat, drought, wet, whatever you want to give it, and it's beautiful and wispy and fine textured and native.
Okay.
It's a native, beautiful native tree.
All right, I can do that one.
All right, that was easier.
Two helps a little
Two's
bit.
easier.
All right. Hey, thanks for your time. I
Thank you
appreciate
very
it.
much.
So that'll be your virtual tour for the Arboretum. Jason Bailey, he's a curator. He's here to answer your questions. Send him an email. Pick up the phone and call, although I don't know how much
Hey.
calling is being done. But definitely send him an email if you got questions about the Arboretum.
Like Dr. Dieter said, we're open at least for the time being. As of today, at this
Clean up
taping.
after your dog.
Clean up after your dogs, and if you see somebody that's not, please hit them with a stick or yell at them or come and tell me. I don't condone violence. Don't hit them with a stick. But come and visit us. We're happy to see you. We're open 365, dawn to dusk, and we love to see visitors. So
It's a
come on
good
out.
way to get out of the house.
Nature never closes.
No, it doesn't.
That's what they say until we close.
Exactly. Okay. Thanks, guys.